What's up everyone and welcome back to the World History Channel. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button today. Let's get started. Contrary to what her popular works of literature might lead you to believe, Louisa May Alcott was much more relaxed. In her well-known novels Little Women and Little Men, Louisa May Alcott created a world that did not accurately reflect her own life. Born in 1832, Alcott was brought up surrounded by intellectuals and financial hardships. She survived the Civil War, worked to end slavery, and was a proponent of women's rights. Like many authors, Alcott seemingly included characteristics of her family in her work, particularly highlighting her siblings and the hardships they suffered. However, the progressive and obstinate writer frequently questioned the gender and social norms of her time. Alcott wrote thrilling pulp fiction under a pseudonym. Although Alcott is typically credited with writing wholesome works like Little Women and Little Men, the author also published several novels under the pen name A.M. Barnard. Behind a Mask, or A Woman's Power, a novella about a manipulative governess in Victorian England, is one of Barnard's best-known works. The governess, named Jean Muir, is an actress, divorcee, and social outcast hired by a wealthy family to take care of their 16-year-old daughter Bella. In disguise, she first appears to the family, giving the impression that she is younger, more empathetic, and more feminine than she actually is. She continues to deceive the family and exploits them at every opportunity. Muir makes all the men in the family fall in love with her. Her true appearance is only discovered after she successfully marries the family patriarch. Alcott also wrote The Abbot's Ghost, also known as Barnard's Temptation by Maurice Traherne. Similar to Behind a Mask, The Abbot's Ghost was a Christmas tale and a thriller. It is about Maurice Traherne, who is accused of being a criminal and is left without a family. Despite this, he works to get back his life and his true love, Octavia. Alcott pushed literary norms by including taboo topics in her works. Alcott's books, especially those published under her nom de plume, included topics like murder, inbreeding, transvestitism, suicide, unwed motherhood, and gender struggles between men and women. Alcott was able to express her own ideas about the events in her life through these bold themes, which were appropriate for the time. Due to the nature of her works, it's clear why she used a sexually ambiguous pen name like A.M. Barnard. Alcott occasionally wrote works within works, like Norna, or The Witch's Curse, which was credited to Jo and Meg from Little Women. The play deals with revenge, jealousy, murder, and sorcery as its central themes. Most of her friends were men. Abigail, Elizabeth, and Anna, three of Louisa May Alcott's sisters, served as the foundation for her characters in Little Women. Meg is modeled after Anna, the oldest. Beth is based on Elizabeth, the middle child, who like Beth was frail and died young. Abigail, the youngest child in the family, is loosely reflected in the character May. However, in contrast to the sisters in the book, the Alcott sisters all experienced bouts of depression and were occasionally intolerable to Louisa. When asked to write a book for girls, Louisa wrote in her journal, "I never liked girls or knew many except my sisters, but our queer plays and experiences may prove interesting, though I doubt it. No boy could be my friend until I had beaten him in a race. And no girl if she refused to climb trees, leap fences," Louisa asserted, like her counterpart Jo. Louisa's sister Anna called other girls commonplace, compared to Louisa. As she got older, Louisa gravitated toward men, largely intellectuals like Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson. Alcott turned to drugs, at first out of necessity, later on as a crutch during her time working as a nurse during the Civil War. Alcott contracted typhoid fever. She experienced pain throughout her life as a result. In truth, her pain may have been caused by the mercury treatment she took to fight typhoid. She began taking morphine to ease her discomfort, but her moral stance on opium caused her to feel conflicted about the drug. She ultimately succumbed. Alcott took opium on and off, and she likely used hashish. The pressures Alcott felt as her family's biggest earner, the sadness she experienced at the loss of her parents and numerous siblings, and the frustration she faced as an unmarried feminist may have contributed to her drug use as well. Perilous Play, one of her works, praises the potential for drugs to provide an escape. She wrote, "Heaven bless hashish if dreams end like this." Alcott wrote about same-sex relationships, including one likely inspired by her father. Amos Bronson Alcott founded the utopian commune, Fruitlands, in 1843 with British transcendentalist Charles Lane. When Amos went to England, they met, and Lane ended up financing the commune. Lane and Amos were like-minded, to a certain extent, and it was Lane who convinced Amos to move his family to Fruitlands. The two men were extremely close, and Louisa's mother, Abigail, suspected the two were carrying on a relationship. Lane was incredibly austere and abhorred sex, which put a strain on Abigail and Amos's marriage when Lane influenced Amos to avoid sex with his wife. Abigail might have had doubts about Lane in part because of the conflict. Louisa may have been influenced by her experiences with her father and Lane by including hints of same-sex relationships in My Mysterious Mademoiselle, such as teasing a kiss between two men. Alcott may have suffered from bipolar disorder. Literary scholars have frequently proposed the possibility that Alcott was bipolar. Harriet Reisen as well as other intellectuals have discovered evidence of mania and depression in her writings. Bipolar disorder is hereditary, and Alcott's uncle, Junius Alcott, experienced erratic behavior throughout his lifetime. He committed suicide in 1852. Even Alcott's father, Amos Alcott, was prone to extreme mood swings and manic episodes. Not everyone agrees, however. Madeline Stern claims that Alcott was merely employing writing techniques, despite the fact that some aspects of her behavior suggest mental illness. Before integrating schools were socially acceptable, her father ran one. Alcott's father operated a school in a Boston Masonic temple in the 1830s. The school was founded on the controversial notion that students should enjoy learning and be more active in the classroom. The curriculum centered around music, art, physical activity, and journal writing. At first, it was a success, but when Amos Alcott started letting black children attend, he lost support and students. Alcott aided in the defense of fugitive slaves and lived near a stop on the Underground Railroad. The Alcotts were anti-slavery, and during their time in Concord, Massachusetts, they helped the Underground Railroad by shielding runaway slaves in their home. The family experienced animosity for their views. Once when a runaway slave was captured and ordered sent to the South, Amos Alcott stepped forward from the crowd to protest the move. And a lawman's bullet whizzed past his shoulder. In 1843, Amos was arrested for refusing to pay taxes, which he did to protest Massachusetts's economic relationship to slave states. As a result, Louisa May Alcott grew up as an abolitionist, highly influenced by her parents' anti-slavery efforts. She never stopped being an activist. In 1863, she wrote a story for the Commonwealth, a Boston newspaper that opposed slavery and supported interracial marriage. She was educated at Ralph Waldo Emerson's house. Alcott spent her life surrounded by intellectuals and writers, in large part because they were close friends with her father. The Alcotts lived in Concord, Massachusetts, which was also home to the families of Ralph Waldo Emerson, Nathaniel Hawthorne, and Henry David Thoreau. The entire area was at the core of the Transcendentalism movement in the United States, a movement that encouraged intuition and imagination to obtain knowledge. Alcott recalled playing with Ralph Waldo Emerson's children, but mostly wrote about how the poet introduced her to books and let her borrow from his library. Louisa received lessons from Emerson and Thoreau, at home and at school, and she may have developed a crush on both men. In her work Moods, she writes about a young girl named Sylvia who was in love with an intellectual like Emerson and a naturalist like Thoreau. During the Civil War, she worked as a nurse. The Civil War offered Alcott the chance to experience adventure, help the Union and abolitionist causes, as well as earn money for her family. Alcott worked as a nurse, beginning in 1862. She had no formal training. She kept a journal while she was a nurse. She later fictionalized it and turned it into her work, Hospital Sketches. Privately wishing all the time that he would be more gentle with her big babies, was Alcott's description of her duties as a Civil War nurse, which included describing soldiers, wounds, conditions, and her relationship with the doctor from whom she received orders. Alcott was sent home with typhoid fever after serving only 2 months. The calomel she took to treat the disease may have caused mercury poisoning and negatively impacted her health for the remainder of her life. Alcott was averse to marriage and proud to be a spinster. Louisa Alcott defied the idea that women should be wives and mother. She grew up watching her mom, Abigail Alcott, struggle to survive as she was completely dependent on her husband's failed enterprises. The Alcott family was poor, and the money Louisa earned from writing was the family's main source of income. Louisa viewed traditional marriage as nothing more than economic, and she longed for freedom and adventure, neither of which she felt were possible if she married. As Louisa's notoriety grew, she not only took care of her family, she controlled her circumstances in a way that most women could not. When her older sister got married in 1860, Louisa commented, "I'd rather be a free spinster and paddle my own canoe." As a child, Alcott was a vegetarian who went for morning runs. Louisa's father, Amos Bronson Alcott, was an educator and forward thinker. During the 19th century, he put his money into a series of communes like Fruitlands. Louisa and her siblings suffered from extreme poverty on the communes. Alcott wrote about her life at Fruitland, explaining why the commune did not eat animals. It does not feed the spirit. It stimulates the propensities. It is taking animal life when the other kingdoms offer sufficient and better increment. Slaughter strengthens the lower instincts. It is the primary cause of the kitchen slavery. It generates in the body the disease animals are subject to, and encourages in man their bestiality. Its odor is offensive and its appearance unaesthetic. Louisa ate meat later in her life when she was able to afford it. She also enjoyed taking long walks and running, something that was considered unladylike at the time. She found running freeing and figured she must have been a horse or a deer in a previous life. Alcott didn't like writing for young audiences. After Alcott completed several chapters of Little Women, she complained that the novel was dull. She wrote under a pseudonym and was much more interested in sensational, gothic, blood and thunder stories. She needed the money from writing to support her family, however. Alcott grew up in poverty before she got a job as a domestic servant. She was determined to rise from that position. Even after she reached a noteworthy level of fame and comfort, she lamented that she was tired of providing moral pap for the young.